Board here, your board at the Ethical Society, that I would like to continue as your leader for another 3 years here, because I'm very excited about a flourishing. Seems like yesterday I came, it really does. But I find it such a flourishing and vibrant and alive community of people with good hearts and clear minds and willing hands, being open to helping others in need, both in our community and outside of it. So it's a joy to be here. I think that something is growing here, something meaningful, something important, something that the world needs. And I want to speak to you about that today, about growing ethical community here at 1906 Rittenhouse and in Philadelphia. And it begins really with each of us, each individual. I'm going to start by talking about growing community within us, moving outwards to this group of people in this building and further out to the city, the neighborhoods around us. Growing ethical community is about being safe, welcoming, and inclusive from the inside out. From the inside out. Because first we have to feel in our hearts and heads safe, welcomed, and included. If we don't, it's hard to be welcoming ourselves and inclusive to others. When we're flourishing as individuals, we're better ambassadors for our cause, better representatives of our values, and better builders of our community. If you've come here to be part of this community, to help us grow ethical community, make sure you take care of yourself too. Take time to follow the advice that's edged on the temple of Apollo at Delphi, often ascribed to Socrates. Know thyself. Know thyself. Appreciate your desires, your hopes, your limitations, and your talents. If you came here hurting, or wounded, or lonely, or seeking meaning, pay attention to that. Listen to your heart. Turn to those people who you trust, whether that's a parent or a partner or a son or a daughter or a doctor or a therapist. We can't offer what they offer. We're not your mother or father in your psyche or in some heaven above, but we are your community. We're not engaged in group therapy. We're engaged in going through life together. We are your community. We're only human. We won't always succeed in bringing out our best, each one of us and as a group. We're flawed creatures with feet of clay. And as a result, we sometimes will feel hurt or overlooked in life at the Ethical Humanist Society. But together, patiently, we can grow ethical community in our hearts, in our building, and in Philadelphia. I want to just take a moment. Normally we do a moment of silence and reflection at the beginning of our program, but I want to do it now. I'm going to ask you to just do a 60-second moment of silence, and I'm going to ask you to visualize something. I'd ask you to just shut your eyes if you're comfortable, sit comfortably in your chair, breathe deep to your belly, and imagine your heart being a growing, lush garden that is flourishing and growing out from your heart, spreading into this room and growing into this neighborhood in this city. Just for 1 minute. Thank you. However you did that, however each of us manages to feel our own self flourishing, growing ethical community requires that you are flourishing yourself. If you're flourishing, you will be a better host here in our community home. I know that when I'm feeling good about myself, when I feel connected to and nourished by my community, I have an extra bounce in my step when I meet a newcomer coming in our building. When I feel integrally a part of this community, I'm a better host. And I want to talk about hosting because it doesn't just take that. The other day I was sitting at home, as I'm often doing, watching some sports on TV, comfortably attired, no shoes on, cool drink in my hand, fully enjoying myself, and I get a call and I find some friends are coming over to dinner. I look around my house, it's a mess, there's no food in the fridge, and I need a shower badly. In some ways I'd just rather sit there comfortable and lazy. But encouraged by my wife Maureen, who is a much better hostess than I am, I rally. Striving to be a good host, I get my arse off that couch, I move the piles of half-open mail out of the way, I sweep the bird food off the floor, I run to the store and I take a shower. And I do so because I want my friends, when they arrive, to feel welcomed. I do so that there's a meal to be served and a cool drink to be poured and a spirit of hospitality in the air. Because it tells my guests, I'm glad you're here, I'm happy to share this time with you. And that's how I think about hosting here at 1906 Rittenhouse. We have to get off our collective comfy community couch. We have to straighten up. It may require a committee meeting, maybe a list of things to do, maybe some tasks, to assure that certain things get done. Why do we do this? Because we want to let our visitors know that we're glad they're here and that we're glad to share this time with them. Because we believe that everybody who walks through these doors is of inherent worth. We do so because ethical humanism is about creating ethical community that's safe, welcoming, and inclusive. Nick Sanders knows this. As head of our community committee, he has invited us all to feel invited and welcome and safe in community meetings and, by extension, in the ethical society as a whole. I thank Nick and Jeff and the board and all the greeters and the hosts and the committee members and board members and those who bring food and drink for our coffee hour and all the other volunteers, for our administrator Dottie, for Antoine and Tyreek, our custodians, and for every volunteer that really lets us be good hosts as a community. I hope we keep bringing out our inner host, if you will. Now, there are many things that will let newcomers feel more included and less like outsiders. And I'm going to start by saying you just have to see through the eyes of somebody new to the situation. I'm going to do something really simple here. Imagine if we had really attractive signs saying where the bathrooms were. Okay? Now, to an insider, that may seem unnecessary. But to a newcomer, it can mean a lot more. It can show that we've gotten off of our couch and straightened up a bit. It says that we, members of the Ethical Society, know where the toilets are, and now you do too. Signs put visitors on more of an equal footing as people who've been here a long time. Newcomers don't have to say, "Excuse me, I'm new here. Where do I pee?" Another simple thing that we can do is all wear name tags. I know some members don't like wearing name tags. Maybe they don't look good, or they just want to feel more anonymous, and I get that. We're flexible. But we also try to understand what it is for a newcomer. Name tags say to our guests, "You're welcome here." They say to our guests that members know each other's name, and now you can too. It says that we want to know your name, and we want you to know our name, because that helps us get to know each other better. Another simple way of letting newcomers feel more at home is to not use a lot of shop talk or acronyms or coded language. Take this made-up announcement. Okay? If you're a long-timer, you might have some idea what I'm talking about. If you are interested in helping with a service auction, Camp Linden, or serving on the AEU committee, please see Nick, Leonard, or Tema in the Collier Room after our spring festival, but before coffee hour. How many of you basically know what that was about? Right, okay. If you're a newcomer, you might say, what is this jargon? What is a service auction? Is it at camp? What's an AEU? Who are these people, and exactly where and when do I meet them? Now, I admit, I use this language myself. I have to do better. Work harder to use inclusive language that communicates what really matters about the ethical humanist society. And what really matters is that you are welcome, included, and safe. I mean, I feel privileged to be part of a great humanist tradition, and I want to offer it to as many people as possible. Feeling a part of any community is often wrapped up with privilege, though. One has privileged power when one understands the community story, or accepted patterns of behavior, or common expressions in language. Membership has its privileges. The more you get to know an environment, the more comfortable you feel, the easier it gets for you here to feel included. You're in the club. You know you belong. The more comfortable we get here, however, the easier it is to forget what it is for a newcomer. Sometimes seeing through the eyes of other people is uncomfortable because it opens us up to some inconvenient truths and some painful realities. Now I'm going to take something very concrete that may be uncomfortable. Like many old buildings in this city, we're not fully accessible. If you use a wheelchair or a cane, you may only feel partially welcomed, like on the first floor. From the perspective of a long-term member who sacrificed a lot of resources to fund and construct a wheelchair ramp that allows access to this building, but only this floor, the wheelchair ramp is a good thing to do. It's a worthwhile compromise between doing nothing and doing what was impossible financially for us. But to someone in a wheelchair, it can feel like a limitation, because it is. People might say, gee, it's like we can't win. And that's true. The more you open your eyes to what it's like to be somebody else, the more challenging it can be to be safe, inclusive, and welcoming. That's a challenge. But it's a challenge we have to be up to, because it's also an opportunity. A lot about being a good host, about being a community that's safe and welcoming and inclusive, is about being present to newcomers, to listening deeply. Now, deep listening is not just about hearing words and knowing what the meaning of them are. Deep listening is also about body language. It's about exchanging appropriate and friendly gestures. It's about being relaxed and attentive at the same time. As I said earlier, when I'm hosting at my house, I'm a better host when I'm not feeling hassled by a lot of tasks and directions and distractions. If a meal's prepared and my cell phone is turned off, I can be more fully present. I can say, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we're together. And the same goes for this Sunday morning. I try to arrive at 9 a.m. from Washington so that I can practice my talk, so I can tune up my guitar, so I can photocopy anything, I can straighten my tie before people walk in. That way I can greet people fully prepared to enjoy their presence with us today. Helping others feeling safe and welcomed and included requires some tact, of course. Some people who are here for the first time today might know more than anything what I'm talking about. We don't do it here, but I've seen it at a lot of small organizations that newcomers are circled like sharks in a feeding frenzy. I don't want to come on too strong to newcomers because it can feel invasive. I try to read body language when they come in. Sometimes they just walk swiftly by with a quick nod. And I want to respect that. Maybe they're just feeling uncomfortable. Maybe they're just checking things out. They just want information. They don't want to interact. And I want to make sure every person coming in here feels invited to interact, but not pressured to. Some people, especially social extroverts, feel safe and welcome in any environment. But for others, feeling safe enough to feel welcome and seek inclusion can take time. And we respect that. Some may want just information. How do you know? Ask. We can say, is there anything you would like to know about our community or about ethical humanism? Or just say, let me know if I can help you with anything. Now, should people who come here for the first time seem eager for conversation, we can invite them to share something about themselves. How did you hear about us? What are you looking for? Open and respectful and compassionate conversation helps grow relationships, and that's something fundamental to the history of ethical culture. Jane Addams, the founder of Hull House in Chicago, was an ethical culture lecturer at the Chicago Ethical Society. And she spoke many times about listening deeply to others. She practiced listening to understand rather than persuade. She practiced listening so that the people who came into Hull House were treated like honored guests, especially if they were marginalized generally by population. Some of the older residents of Hull House were particularly interesting to Jane Addams. They would talk about the old country, but the rest of society had left them behind. Jane Addams said, "Whenever I heard the high, eager voices of old women, I was irresistibly interested and left anything I might be doing in order to listen to them." Addams understood that the best way to build understanding, interconnectedness, and community is by sharing each other's story. She saw the value of something she called sympathetic knowledge, the understanding that grows best through personal acquaintance and friendship. It's not always easy to build such healthy, open, and respectful relationships. While we may be all social creatures, we're not all born with natural social skills. We can become better at growing ethical community through relationship. It's one reason why I'm considering for next year, talk to me about it, of offering some relationship building and communication classes at the Society. It's why I taught these same courses as part of the Coming of Age program at the Washington Ethical Society. It's why I'm going to offer some communication courses, workshops at the FEST conference, Future Ethical Societies, next weekend with Christian. The young adults from around the ethical culture movement are going to meet here with Christian Hayden and Kim McKay and Morgan Andrews, a facilitator from Theater of the Oppressed, to explore what growing ethical community is about. Now, in speaking to Christian, he shared with me some words that so reflect my thinking that I want to share them with you. He said, we inhabit a beautiful city, but a city plagued with many ills nonetheless, the most striking of which, and visible, being poverty. Poverty's most insidious aspect is how it breaks down the potential for relationships between those who experience it and those who don't. It is us, our community, our philosophy, which pose a unique opportunity to address this very real and crippling manifestation of oppression. With that thought, we have to address the oppressor within ourselves. Ask ourselves, how have we accepted the divisions in our society as fact and immovable? What stops us from achieving the dialectical relationship between our community and others, between ourselves and others? Thank you, Christian. One answer Christian finds is in Paulo Freire. It is dialogue. Dialogue that allows us to move forward towards real community. In Freire's words, dialogue requires an intense faith in humans. Faith in his power to make and remake, to create and recreate. Faith in his vocation to be more fully human. Are we ready to do what Freire urges us to do? Are we ready to do what Christian is urging future ethical society members to do? To enter into dialogue that shakes us, moves us, and connects us more fully to each other. Are we ready to move from dialogue to action? To follow the founder of ethical humanism, Felix Adler's words in saying that we should elicit the best in others and thus elicit the best in ourselves. That is humanism in action, if you will. And it becomes a deep investment in the simultaneous realization of the humanity of others and ourselves. It ties our destiny to the destiny of other people. It points us towards true ethical community. Now, nurturing healthy ethical community and growing ethical societies is harder when differences get in the way. Differences are, of course, wonderful. Greater diversity brings us valuable resources and perspectives. But when the differences we're trying to navigate include those that are seared into our culture by abusive or harmful power relationships, it can require a lot of work. We often struggle how to grow relationships across differences that are laced with power implications. It's partially why building community in a homogeneous group is a lot easier than in a multicultural group. We don't always know how to approach power differences. If we think that somebody is more powerful, we often avoid or challenge or seek favor from them. If we think the other person is less powerful than us, we might paternalistically ignore or control or appropriate their differences. And this is a challenge for everybody, but even more so for ethical humanists. Because in navigating differences in economic privileges and race and gender, sexual orientation, religion, ability, and so on, while at the same time trying to change the world, that's tough. It reminds me of a critical moment during Occupy Philadelphia a couple of years ago. In October of 2011, activists who were occupying Dilworth Plaza demanded an end to gross economic inequality and the control of government by money. Quakers, other progressive faiths, and activists jumped in to support the 300-plus occupiers. But mistrust of difference in the form of insidious racism raised its ugly head. As our own Ethical Society member Aisha Richardson explained, Occupy did not welcome people of color en masse as equal participants in sharing power. She and her mother Linda witnessed unmerited exclusion as well as doubts about the credibility and competency of people of color. They themselves did not feel welcome, and the agenda of Occupy didn't make the room necessary to discuss the public and private disinvestment of low-income communities all over this city in the United States. On November 13th, when Jesse Jackson Sr. came to visit, he shared how Occupy has to negotiate differences more effectively and build broader alliances. He discussed a deep division between, on the one hand, the main group of Occupy activists and the source for powerful civil rights in this city, historically black churches. Some of the pastors who occupied Reverend Jackson to Occupy told me that they wished that there was a better bridge built, but they were frustrated by a lack of real communication. Jackson said that many leaders in the African American community saw Occupy as a, quote, white hippie derelict movement. Some of the Occupy leaders said that the black churches and activists of color didn't get involved. And in this short, pressure-filled, chaotic time prior to the eviction from Dilworth Plaza on November 30th, this difference was left unresolved. And it's a tough difference that ethical culture has been trying to negotiate for a century. I've spoken about it often here. So today I'm not going to give you the litany of the history. I'm just going to tell you about one incident recently that I found interesting of trying to negotiate differences. This past Earth Day on April 22nd, I spent the morning celebrating with the House of Umoja. The House of Umoja is an organization and community on the 1400 block of North Fraser Avenue Street in West Philly. It was founded by Queen Mother Falaka Fatah decades ago as a center to try to help youth in Philadelphia avoid violence and create a flourishing future for themselves. It's described on their website as a sort of urban boys' town. I like that. Having met some of the organizers of House of Umoja at a Peace Day meeting upstairs, I volunteered to offer a crafts project and do a little sing-along at their Earth Day festival. And I imagined the sing-along as a casual little sing-along with a small group of kids like I often do. I could bring my Rise Up singing book and do some old folky songs that I like, some environmental songs that I could play, maybe some Pete Seeger and Kumbaya and all of that. When I arrived, perhaps predictably, the feel was a little different. It was not like other Earth Days that I had attended in my Birkenstocks and t-shirts. For starters, a DJ from radio station Old School 100.3 was firing up the crowd. Now, how many people listen to 103, Old School? Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Check it out. This has categorized itself as urban oldies for over a year. The first song WRNB played to announce their new identity was Atomic Dog by George Clinton. Now, how many people listen to George Clinton? All right. The stage was blasting Motown and disco and funk down North Fraser Street. An impromptu parade following two African drummers wove its way up to the stage, and then Hugh Taft-Morales. I was not leading a little sing-along for small kids. I was up on stage, mic'd up, feeling very, very quiet. Now, I've done stuff like this enough to know that sometimes you just play the hands you've been dealt, so I launched into the garden song, a somewhat cutesy environmental song. I followed it with Common Thread, which, having a nice multicultural message, still lacked that soulful, funky flavor that might have gotten me a little bit more applause at this event. So live and learn, right? But I was thankful that my hosts on Fraser Street, Angie and Leslie and Ashok and the Peace Day kids, were so welcoming to me. My difference didn't matter. From the moment I arrived, I felt welcome and included. Some of you may remember Ashok and the Peace Day kids. They've attended the last couple of Peace Day sing-alongs we've had outside. They offer a universal greeting. And they did it at this Earth Day. And it made me feel very welcome because we've done it here. And it goes like this, and I invite you to just repeat each phrase after me if you're comfortable. I'm not going to do the hand signals because I messed them up practicing this morning and it gets confusing. And you can interpret higher power however you want. I warn you, it's in there, okay? So just repeat this if you feel comfortable. I offer you peace.
I offer you peace.
I offer you friendship.
I offer you friendship.
I offer you love.
I offer you love.
I hear your needs.
I hear your needs.
I see your beauty.
I see your beauty.
I feel your feelings.
I feel your feelings.
My wisdom comes.
My wisdom comes
from our higher source.
from a higher source.
And I salute that source in you.
And I salute that source in you.
We must work together.
We must work together
in peace.
in peace
To save our environment.
to save our environment.
Peace.
Peace.
So we shared that. It's cute, and all the little Earth Day kids shared it with us. And I appreciate how accessible that was. I could interpret higher source for me to mean the best in each of us and this community here. It means to me ethical communities where I find my life is more than the sum of its parts. It means growing inclusive and ethical communities. It means this ethical community here. Now I'm going to conclude speaking by talking a little bit about this city, Philadelphia. Until now, I've been speaking about building ethical community from the inside out, which I really think is the only way you can do it well. I began by envisioning ethical community in your hearts, growing outwards to fill the lives of others in this neighborhood and the community. But as my story about the House of Umoja points out, this city is filled with communities reaching out to us. It's a vibrant city. It's filled with activists and organizations doing good work and seeking partners. There's a history of community-based Philadelphia organizing that can invigorate us and inspire us, from the founding of the Pennsylvania Abolition Society in 1775, through the Philadelphia Ethical Society member Jenny Fels's role in creating the Pennsylvania Consumers League, through the war resistors John and Bonnie Raines' raid on FBI files, to the rioters against gender exclusion demanding that SEPTA provide safe public transportation for those of all gender identities, to Occupy Philadelphia's crusade against greed, to decarcerate PA's great battle against our criminal justice system, to Power, the interfaith organization we just joined, working for a living wage and public education and the rights of immigrants. Philadelphia is full of these opportunities to do the right thing. This may be a nationwide trend. Betsy Lightburn gave me an article from The Nation about how cities are reviving an activist tradition within municipal-private partnerships. In The Rise of the Progressive City by Michelle Goldberg, she explains this frustration all across cities at a totally incompetent federal government in dealing with real problems on the ground in cities. So people are beginning to focus on city halls. Goldberg reports that since 1996, for example, San Francisco's enacted one law after another improving wages, benefits, paid sick leave, and health care. Alan Berube, the Deputy Director of the Brookings Institution Metropolitan Policy Program, notes more cooperation among businesses and workers and government in the wake of last year's progressive mayoral victories that he has, quote, has got legs. It may go on. He says, you can trace it back to the Occupy movement and Mitt Romney's 47%, and what was a broader kind of national growing awareness of inequality and its effects. Goldberg writes about successful minimum wage campaigns for $15 an hour minimum wage in SeaTac. SeaTac is the city around Seattle-Tacoma Airport, as well as a non-binding referendum in Chicago calling for $15 minimum wage for companies that do business in the city. President Obama met with mayors last fall, and he talked about a growing demand for social justice in and around the nation, for health care, wage fairness, coming from the cities. New York Mayor de Blasio points out, quote, "It's clear something is happening around the country, that the inequalities we're facing are becoming just fundamentally unacceptable." Pittsburgh Mayor Petuto says the change is driven because, quote, "the population beneath the poverty line is growing. A lot of those were underdogs, populists, reformers, and the public was ready for us." Now in Philadelphia, we're ready. Just last week, Mayor Nutter signed an executive order raising the minimum wage for subcontracted Philadelphia workers to $10.88 an hour. Councilman Whitson Good Jr. suggested that this might not have happened without, quote, "local movement to push progressive economic policy being led by SEIU, Power, and Fight for Philly." Tomorrow I'm going to be going out to the airport with other clergy from the Power organization to make sure that workers there are given the minimum wage they've been promised, the living wage. Many members of the Ethical Society here have spent many hours contributing time and energy to the phone banks to push for these progressive causes, along with our allies from Lev Hayir, who've been doing Power for a while. I hope we're going to continue to build ethical community here in this city by meeting and partnering with many, many progressive forces. Because as we open our doors wider, we'll be able to walk into this city with more confidence and purpose. We'll be able to carry that expression with us. The place where we seek the highest is holy ground. I like how Aisha interpreted this phrase to me. She said that it suggests that as ethical humanists, we seek the highest in ourselves. So wherever we go is holy ground. You take your values with you wherever you go. We can never be satisfied with the status quo. We always have to seek the highest. We always have to reach for our own ideals. And as we open those doors wider, more diverse, vibrant, progressive humanists are going to find a safe and welcoming and inclusive community. It's going to take work. It's going to mean we're going to have to get off our comfy collective couches every now and then in order to be good hosts. But it's why I am here, and I hope it's why, in part at least, you're here. Thank you very much. And part of cleaning up our comfy collective living room is welcoming the financial support of friends and members here at the Ethical Society. So